Okay, I'm here. Cheers. Late again, as usual. Maybe I should just start scheduling these for like 7:05. I'd still be late. All right. So this week, not a lot to talk about in terms of like city government stuff because there was only a couple of meetings and there's nothing. I mean, there's really nothing to talk about here. Usually where I get heated and I get worked up about the things that the local government is doing, the city government is doing, usually has to do with just anything related to private property control and things of that nature. So where there isn't anything like that, there's really not a lot. Okay, so commissions like the public policy and general government, whatever it's called now, they do a lot of things like granting permits for different organizations and groups that just want to put things on in the city. And like, that's super annoying to have to sit there and watch that. Like, why do you have to get the city's permission to do something on your own property? As in the case with, church picnics and things like that. Like, who cares? Why is this a thing? But, it's a revenue stream for the city, I guess, but still, it drives me crazy. But other than that, I looked at the Planning Commission this month. There wasn't a lot. I mean, there was a little bit there, I guess. I mean, the mayor starts off again. He's holding to strict Robert's rules still. He's holding on to that. Again, that is another thing that keeps coming up in these meetings now. Ever since the blow up with the Public Works meeting with Tory Jennings and the mayor, and Jeremy Slawinski was involved in that a little bit. But since then, the mayor's just been like, all right, we're following Robert's rules to a T. And he has been in all of these meetings, which really slows down the discussion and really kind of bogs everything down unnecessarily, I think. I understand Robert's rules in a very formal type of setting, which I guess city government meetings are technically, but this is a small enough town. Everybody knows each other. I mean, you should be able to just talk about things in these meetings and it shouldn't be a big deal. Like, it shouldn't, like, everybody should know each other enough to, respect not talking over people and things like that. And yeah, and you can, have the motions and everything that you want to pass things in an official, legitimate fashion. But Robert's rules to me is more something that you use in like big, like I'm in the Republican Party and I go to a lot of the, caucuses and conventions that they have. This is a big thing where, nobody knows anybody there because they're so big. Obviously, a handful of people no matter where you go, but in a big setting like that, Robert's rules are perfect for stuff like that. But in these small, like little city government meetings, to follow it strictly is very obviously bogging down the conversation. And, I kind of think that's what the mayor had in mind when he decided that he was going to start following this to a T. I mean, good for him. But yeah, it's hard to watch a lot of times. It's unwatchable. So I'm not a big fan of the whole Robert's rules. Fine, like I understand the idea behind it, but in like these smaller meetings, kind of pointless. But anyway, they're resuming in-person meetings or did he say next month? In a very limited capacity. So if you want to show up to any of the meetings, you're still going to have to wear a mask or you will not be let in. So he reinforced this. I guess we're still clinging to the mask voodoo, the mask magic. That's just completely made up BS, completely anti-science. But I guess that's where we're at right now with city government. the first thing that came up on the agenda in the Plan Commission was just they want to build an outdoor visitation center or area for the Portage County Health Center. So again, this is all COVID related, I'm sure. Oh, and by the way, they had like an emergency council meeting too, so that they could pass this stuff, because there was a few things on this Planning Commission agenda that they had to pass through. And so when they got to do things in a hurry, they got to have these special city council meetings where they get the city council together to actually vote on the stuff that they want to pass. And really the most notable thing in any of these meetings was, frankly, it was Karnowski's mustache. I mean, he's got this nice full, like, Freddie Mercury rockin' mustache again. And I just want to say, Karnowski, that looks great. It looks great on your face. I like it. He had it for a while to, like, this is important city government business, mind you. That's what we're here to discuss. And given that he is the city director, his face is a very important part of the discussion, I think. But he used to have this mustache that came down like a biker mustache, and I thought that was badass. Like, I thought that was pretty cool. But the mustache he's got now is pretty cool too. I like it. So Karnowski, I like it. I think it looks pretty good on you. The other thing to talk about as far as the Plan Commission was agenda number 6, which is this subdivision off of Gala Road, which it's off of Brolowski. It's kind of over by Fleet Farm and all those places over there. And if you've ever been driving around out there, and all you high school kids that are out there smoking pot, going on your little pot drives, I know you're out there, and I know you know exactly what I'm talking about. But the big empty field right on like Gala Road, Gala Drive, whatever it is, Gala out there. It's this big subdivision that they've been kind of discussing developing for quite a while now. This is something that the town of Hull owns, and so there's always concerns with like annexation issues, because the city's got to run infrastructure out there to any new subdivisions, and then it basically just gets annexed by the city of Stevens Point at that point. So Tori Jennings calls in. She doesn't want it to happen because her reasoning is that the city can't pay for the infrastructure they already have, and that this lot that 39 lots they want to put out there. She said something about the property taxes. We're never going to pay for the upkeep on this. I don't know. I don't know how much it costs, to be perfectly honest. Like, I don't know what people are paying taxes on. There's a lot of nice looking houses out there, so I'm sure the taxes aren't cheap out there. But she doesn't like it. But let's face it, I think this has more to do with her strong towns commitments. So I think that's really what this is about. And she's just kind of like using some other excuses to try and derail the project. And then Trevor Rourke writes in, and he just had questions. He wants to know how this is going to impact the city's status as a green tier community, and how it's going to impact like climate change and affordable housing and diversity and inclusion and all this stuff that frankly doesn't matter when it just comes to selling a parcel of land to a developer. Ultimately, it just doesn't matter. I guess the thing I don't like about this stuff going through committees is that it gives people who have nothing invested in a project too much of a voice, to be quite frankly. They shouldn't have anything to say about something that they have no connection with, to be perfectly honest. You're talking about people with real money who want to develop a real piece of dirt and put real houses on it for real people to live in. And then you have people who just have these flighty, noble ideas or theories about how they think things should be, which is not real at all. And they come in and they say, well, I don't think it should be this way. I think it should be, no. Okay. Like if you really think that things should be a certain way, then create like a little group and raise money and buy all the properties right from underneath the city and develop them how you want them to be developed. Don't just go to the city government and say, hey, I think policy should be this, or I think no, if you don't know how any of this stuff works. So yeah, just stay out of it. That's my advice. That's my utopian world where everybody just, if they have no connection to some kind of project that's going on, they just stay out of it and hope for the best. I don't know. I just had to comment on that, I guess, because that drives me nuts, because it happens all the time. Like every single month, it's more of this. And some people I bag on more than others, like Nancy Rappi with her parking issues. Like, who cares? Just, you don't have anything invested, just stay out of it. It doesn't matter. Anyway, it does get approved. And this was just an item, I believe, to start kind of looking at this. I don't think they're doing anything with it right now, because any big development project's got to go through 500 hoops before it can actually get started. Such is the nature of government, and why I oppose it most of the time. So, Kneebone, I wrote a little note here saying that, oh yeah, she made the point that, look, it's in the middle of a residential area. It's going to get developed anyway, so we may as well be the ones to do it. She's right. It's going to get developed one way or another, so just do it already. And, Trevor Rourke and Tori Jennings are certainly welcome to, give their input, but if policy is, look, Tori's on the council. She, whatever ideas she has about something, she absolutely can impose on the vote. So, isn't, that should be as much a conflict of interest as anything else, right? Let's see. Item 10 was, the old Point Motel on Division Street. So they are finally going ahead with that. They're going to put up a multi-use apartment building. I guess they're just going to raise the thing to the ground, which is a little sad. We're losing a little bit of history. And what about all the tweakers and prostitutes that use the Point Motel? Where are they going? They're going to be displaced now. It's a little sad. The Point Motel holds a special place in my heart. It was a very unique place in Stevens Point, a place that got visited often by police, but it's got a cool history. Let's face it. There's always something cool going on. Do you think the cops are happy to see the Point Motel go down? Probably not. They got nothing to do now. Like their calls just dropped by like 50% with the Point Motel gone. So I guess the question is, where are the tweakers and prostitutes going to go now? What's going to be the next property? I don't know. Let's have some kind of review committee set up to follow the tweakers and prostitutes and see where they're going next. Maybe that would be as good a use of city time as anything else that they do. So what else did they do? Oh, they talked about acquisition of the Maytag building. We knew this was all going to happen. More discussion on the zoning code, which is dry. It's boring. It's horrible. I don't know if Karnowski actually enjoys doing this stuff. Like if his personality is just like, man, I love going through zoning code chapter by chapter and just rewriting it and cleaning it all up. It seems sometimes that he really enjoys doing it. Good for him. I think it's boring as hell, and I think most people do, and I think most people don't understand, myself included, at least half of what's written in that thing. So, they're talking about that, but yeah, I took a nap through that section because I'm not following it. And then community development annual report. Oh, so they put out a report on development happening in the community. Every year they do this. It is on the city website. So if you are interested, I'll probably take a look at it just because I'm kind of curious to see how things are going. And they put this out every year. So it's out now if that's something that interests you and you want to check it out. So the special council meeting that they called was to apply for a grant because they're going to repurpose the convent across the street from Pacelli. They're going to turn it into low-income housing. All the nuns have moved out pretty much. I think they said there was 5 left, and there at one time there was like 200 people that lived in that convent, which is crazy. It doesn't seem like Stevens Point's big enough for 200 nuns, but I guess it is. Well, not anymore though, because they're all gone now. So there's like 5 of them living there, and they already have plans to move. City's going to get it. They're going to revamp it. And the other thing had to do with approval for the visitation area for the Portage County Health Center, which all this stuff passed. Of course, the city council is going to pass this stuff. Ginger Keemer, welcome to the city council. That's her first meeting now that Cindy Nebel's gone. So that was the first time the first vote she got to take was on applying for this grant, I think. I think that's the first thing that she did. But anyway, that's all that's going on in city government this week. Nothing to talk about. There was no, I'm always waiting for the blow up that's going to happen between Tory Jennings and the mayor, because that's always fun to watch. But other than that, there was nothing really that went on. Nothing interesting anyway, unless you're like way into rewriting zoning code. So the big news this week in our little neck of the woods here was the constitutional sanctuary resolution that went before I believe it was the Executive Operations Committee at the county level. So this thing comes up to this committee. I'm pretty sure it was the Executive Operations Committee. Basically, it's just a resolution that reaffirms the county's stance on protecting constitutional rights. So the idea behind it is that no matter what, the goons and the parasites in DC are doing, that our constitutional rights would be protected here. And that's what I thought it was, but apparently I'm not, because there were a lot of people there that disagreed with it and had a lot of other things to say that I never even considered. But it was all basically silliness and hysterics, as it usually is when it comes to this stuff. Rosalind says, I heard the convent was being acquired by a private group, not the city, the same group that built the Berkshire. Yes, and the city, the city is the one applying for the grant, I believe, though, that is going to help with the cost of this. But yes, I think you're right. It is. I think it's the same people that did the Berkshire too. So a lot of people showed up to this thing, like a ton of people, which is pretty amazing. I just got to say, before I go on, that all of these people that have been showing up to all of these government meetings to become a major pain in the ass to local government, God bless you guys. thank God you're out there to do this. People like Keith and Becky and Brock and John and a lot of other people are just getting involved with just showing up at these things to start questioning everything these people are doing. And I mean, I gotta say, it almost brings a tear to my eye to see so many people willing to just become a royal pain in the ass to local government. God bless you people. I want to see more and more and more of it because this stuff is fun. And it makes local government people nervous when over 100 people show up for just this one resolution, right? It's amazing. Now, we can't see this in the city of Stevens Point yet, unfortunately, because they're still limiting the people that can attend. And by limit, I mean you can't attend if you don't have a mask. I'm not going to wear a mask through a 2-hour meeting. I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that. So I'm just not going to show up. But as soon as everything opens up at the city level too, man, this is going to be great. It's going to be awesome to get in there and to be able to. I've been waiting for this for so long, to just be able to show up at a meeting and look people like David Shore or Tory Jennings in the eye as I'm sitting there giving them a tongue lashing in a public forum. I'm sitting here waiting for that opportunity, and we're almost there. Vaccines are out. Everybody's starting to get back to normal. I'm seeing more and more people out there just not wearing masks anymore. Thank God. This thing is coming to an end, as much of an end as it's going to come to. But yeah, so they all show up. Most of them are speaking in favor of this constitutional resolution. Now, the people who weren't in favor of it, again, there was this weird, separate, you knew who was going to be in favor and who wasn't, because all the people that were wearing a mask were going to be against this, and all the people who weren't wearing masks were going to be for this. So yeah, right there says something about somebody who believes in personal liberty and who has an interest in getting a constitutional resolution like this passed, and those who do not, clearly. And it's funny because the people who spoke against it, they made it all about the Second Amendment, because there was a little phrase in the resolution itself that said, including the Second Amendment, because let's face it, that's the one that gets stepped on and trampled and kicked around all the time in the federal government and at the state level. So, they included it in, I understand why they put it in there, to say, yes, even this one that a lot of you people don't like. And so that was the one everybody fought about and glommed onto. And yeah, it's funny because the resolution passed ultimately, but all these people were just bickering about, well, we don't like the Second Amendment thing being in there. And they made it all about the guns. The Constitution, the Constitution doesn't necessarily apply to local government on any level. The Constitution itself is basically just a document for how to structure the national government. That's all it is. Basically, what they're trying to get through is a resolution that guarantees the Bill of Rights, because the Bill of Rights was okay, here's a little history lesson if you don't know this. As the Constitution was being written, most people in the United States were not for having a national government. Most people were opposed to the Constitution. And the reason for that was just because they had just got done fighting a revolution against a central authority, and all of the states basically banded together as independent, essentially, countries. There wasn't this notion of the American people. You were a citizen of Virginia or a citizen of Rhode Island or a citizen of New York. You were not an American. Like, that didn't exist. That wasn't a concept back then. So you were a citizen of your state, and the states all got together because they wanted full autonomy from the British Empire. Well, after the Revolutionary War, there was talk of amending the Articles of Confederation. The Articles of Confederation, which were just basically a loose agreement between the states. Anything that the states agreed on had to be unanimous, and Rhode Island back then was notorious for being just the guys that shot everything down. Probably because they were the smallest of the colonies, and they still had like equal weight and equal say, and they like to throw it around. You know, good for them. And so they were they were often stonewalling a lot of the things that a lot of, like, 12 other states would agree on something and want to implement something, and Rhode Island would be right there to say, no, we're not going to do it. And then it would fail. That's how things operated under the Articles of Confederation, which, Frank, I like it. I like that. If you don't have unanimous consent on something, you shouldn't be able to do it. So anyway, the idea for the Constitution, the only reason the idea for a Constitution even came around was because the Articles of Confederation needed to be amended. So the Constitutional Convention was an outgrowth of that. So when they wrote the Constitution, they brought it up. They had to show it to all the states. All the states had to ratify it in order for it to go into law. But most people didn't want it because they said it gave too much power to a central authority, which it did. And so back then you had the big arguments between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. And I mean, you can read all of that stuff. It's all out there. Obviously, I side with the Anti-Federalists in this case because all of their arguments turned out to be right. Like, it was, the Federalists were wrong. After 200 years, we've seen that the Constitution has not been enough to limit government to what the ideal was back then. Okay. So the Bill of Rights came along only as a way to reach a compromise between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists at the time. So they wanted guarantees. The Anti-Federalists basically said, look, we're not going to sign on to this thing because it gives too much power to a central authority. We just got done fighting a war against a central authority. We don't want a new one. We don't want a new king, essentially. So the only way that they were going to sign onto the Constitution was if they had guarantees that came along with the Constitution. And that's why we have a Bill of Rights, because that's why we have freedom of speech, right to bear arms. It's funny, in this committee meeting, a lot of people speaking against it were saying things like, oh, I'm not anti-Second Amendment. You know, my husband goes hunting and, you know, he's got a rifle. Guys, the Second Amendment is not about hunting. I'm sorry. It's about shooting government agents when they come for you. That's what it is in a nutshell. Now, that sounds bad to a lot of people, especially people on the left. You know, when you tell them that you have a Second Amendment because the population needs to have an army to essentially itself be an army to match the army that the government can put up against you. People don't like to hear that, but that's what it was. That's what the Second Amendment was written for. Because, again, they just came off a revolution fighting against a king who fielded an army, and the only reason Americans had any chance at all is because they all had weapons and they could fight back. And the reason the Second Amendment is there, and yeah, people don't like to hear it, it's to shoot government agents. That's what it's there for. Okay, sorry. So, you know, you get a lot of people in this committee meeting that were like, well, I don't like the Second Amendment stuff. I'm not against the Second Amendment, but all right. Anytime you say, I'm not against something, but, then you're really kind of against something. You're certainly not all for it, that's for sure. So that came out a lot in this meeting. There was a guy in there who, basically said this whole thing was just a big diversion and the county's got better things to focus on, like the roads and the Portage County Health Center. Okay, this is how commies think, right? They think that whatever they think is important for everybody. Like, they don't understand that individuals are just that. They're individuals. They have their own thoughts, their own wants, their own needs, their own preferences. And, to say that this isn't important to me because we have roads to fix. Well, first of all, you're not doing a good job with fixing the roads. So you just toss that one right out the window, okay? So obviously, if the county is going to do anything at all of substance, then a resolution like this can definitely be more achievable than fixing roads. But yeah, I mean, it just strikes me that they never seem to understand that people do have their own preferences. They have their own preferences in life. Look, I would rather have freedom of speech. I would rather have the ability to get on a stream like this and just say what I want about the local government and have dirt roads and not have good roads at all. That's my preference, okay? So, this guy doesn't speak for me. He doesn't speak for anybody. And I find with a lot of the comments that come from people on the left is that they're trying to speak for everybody. They're trying to pretend that they represent everybody, and they don't. People have different preferences in all cases. Do the roads need to be fixed? Sure, everybody agrees that. Does the health center need whatever it needs? I don't think anybody in the county government's going to disagree with that. But that has nothing to do with whether or not they should pass this resolution either. Like, how is that even... Like, how do you not get that? How do you not get that? Yeah, you can do all of it. It's not like one or the other. It's not like if they pass this resolution, suddenly the roads fall into disrepair and we'll never fix them again, right? Like, why can't you do all of it? So anyway, there was another guy that, obviously not a gun owner, who doesn't follow anything about guns. And look, I mean, I'm not... Yeah, I got my fair share of guns, of course, like any red-blooded American, but I don't follow guns. Like, I'm not on the NRA's newsletter and reading their email blasts every day, right? But here's somebody who definitely is even farther removed than that, who decided to stand up and be like, hey, nobody's coming for your guns. What are you worried about? And again, he made this about the guns. Like, it's a constitutional sanctuary resolution. It's not a Second Amendment sanctuary resolution. But again, they're making it about the guns. And so, he's like, oh, the government's not coming for your guns. You're crazy. You conspiracy people. The people who are gun people, and I have a lot of them in my family, every time I attend, like a holiday get together, I learn all of the new ways the government is trying to take your guns. They are absolutely trying to take your guns. Anybody who says otherwise is just completely ignorant of the entire topic. They've been trying to take your guns for a very long time. They've been trying to, fiddle with ammunition production, just like any little trick that they can think of to stop you from having guns and ammunition and all that fun stuff. They're doing it, and they're constantly looking for new ways to do it. So don't give me that bullshit. Don't tell me they're not coming for my guns. They would absolutely take my guns if they could, but they can't. And that's the point. That's why you want to reaffirm your constitutional rights, okay? That's why people are doing this. So, anti-gun guy and lady who thinks the Second Amendment is all about hunting can't pass laws at the county level that does anything with your guns, okay? They should have no say in this discussion at all. But they do, and they're going to show up and they're going to talk about it. And then, they're not coming for your guns guy went on to say something to the effect of, which I thought was like a pretty stupid comment too, was just that, if a business wants to come into town or a family wants to move into town and they see that we passed this resolution, then they might decide to just keep driving and go live somewhere more progressive. Because progressive is somewhere you go when you don't need rights. When you have people like Gun Guy and Hunting Lady telling you what you can and cannot do, and having all the central planning of markets and central planning of community developments, and everybody's the same and everybody thinks the same, and like that's progress in the minds of some of these people. And it never is, of course. Progress is actually defending individual rights, even at times that it seems like a real challenge to do so. Like in these people's minds, they're just constantly bombarded with media about like shootings and stuff. That's all they report on, right? Almost like, so I don't consume a lot of media at all. And I do that on purpose because I know it's just, look, it's going to turn your brain to mush. All right. Like, I'm sorry to say, like, when your parents were telling you when you were a kid that watching too much TV is going to rot your brain, it really is going to rot your brain. And too much attention paid to like the media, whether you get it through TV or social media, whatever it is, it's going to affect you negatively. And what it does is it basically gives these people this really fearful, negative view of the world that's just not reality at all. But that's all they hear in the news, and they think it's like this big epidemic. And it becomes this big issue for them. So that when people say we absolutely support the Second Amendment, what they're hearing is, oh, you just want, school kids to die in school shootings. That's literally what they're thinking. It's completely brain dead, just completely, just people caught inside their own heads with the media that they choose to consume. It's just a self-fulfilling negative feedback loop that they're on. And look, there's just nothing you're ever going to do about somebody like that. There's just nothing. 100 people can show up and speak in defense of like these constitutional resolutions. It doesn't matter to anybody who was there wearing a mask and speaking out to you. Did not change their mind. They all went home, or they all went on social media and they complained about, all these ignorant people that just want school kids to die. And they're trying to bring that to our county, our beautiful progressive county. That's what they're thinking. And that's what they're saying about. I guarantee it. I'm saying that without having personally seen anything, but I know how these people react to stuff like this. They do not like it. They especially don't like it when you show up in numbers like that. So yeah, most of the people there just, they spoke out in favor of it. There was a woman there who was a minister, and she kind of went on Hinge, kind of insinuating that this was backed by evil corporations. Oh, and like a lot of these people took aim at Scott Soik, who like brought this forward, right? He basically brought the resolution to the committee. And a lot of them are trying to call him out, like, oh, well, of course you support this. One guy said, oh, you're a gunsmith. Of course you would support this because, it hurts your business if we don't protect the Second Amendment. And this should be like a conflict of interest. What an idiot. Like, I don't know who that guy is. I should have written down their names, but I don't care, to be honest. What an idiotic thing to say. Man, and the thing that drives me most crazy about local government is that these idiots are everywhere in Stevens Point and Portage County. They're just running loose out there. And they show up at these meetings and they make their voice heard. And it's all this just two-dimensional, childish bullshit that like any idiot can see through. Like, it's just all they do is like repeat these like propaganda talking points that have been debunked over and over by people a billion times smarter than they are. And it's just so funny to me to watch this all unfold. And these people they just look so dumb when they show up and they say stuff like this. And I felt bad for Scott Soik because there was a couple people that took aim at him and they were like, well, you and and Soik always handles like everything with grace, with far more grace than I would, for sure. Because I would get up there and I would be, cracking very bad sarcastic jokes on these people and making offhand comments. And I don't have the level of patience that somebody like Scott Soik does. And it's funny because he has to get up there and he has to explain to everybody in the room, not the people that showed up in favor of his resolution, but to like the committee and the other people that were there. He had to like slowly explain it. And I thought it was hilarious. I don't know if he was like kind of trolling them by doing this. I mean, I definitely would have been, or if he was like legitimately just being sincere and like really trying to like help these people understand how things work. But he's like explaining to them, he's like, yes, these people came to me because I sit on the board and I can bring a resolution like this to the committee. They can't do that just on their own. They got to go through somebody who sits on the board. And these people are from all of your districts. And he pointed out several people in attendance there. One of them, I think, was mine. I don't even know my district guy. I never met him or anything. But he's like explaining this very slowly, like they're just idiots. And of course they are. But, he's being pretty gracious about it. And I couldn't tell if he was being sarcastic or not, but I thought it was pretty funny. I got a chuckle out of that. Yes, these people came to me and I brought this resolution to you because that's how government works. There was Keith. Keith made a good point about how the sheriff is basically, he's the most powerful law enforcer in the country, like anywhere in the land, obviously within the jurisdiction of the county that he serves in. But yeah, and it's funny because like I've known this for a long time. I've said in other live streams that, I grew up reading like New American Magazine and, being exposed to all this crazy radical right-wing stuff that a lot of people in Stevens Point hate, but which is the truth, that the sheriff has the authority to basically kick out federal agents that come into the county. If the IRS comes in and they want to arrest somebody on back taxes, the sheriff can say, no, get out of here. You're not arresting anybody. And if they don't comply, the sheriff has absolutely the right to arrest them and throw them in jail. It's happened before in American history. And like to those sheriffs, I mean, those guys are heroes. So it was good that he pointed that out. But again, that's just going to be one of those things that people on the left are going to be like, oh, that can't possibly be true. We have an FBI and we have all these other federal agencies that have more authority than the sheriff. No, they don't. The sheriff has all the authority when it comes to law enforcement within a county. And that was something that somebody else, one of the people speaking against the resolution, the guy who I thought was my district guy, but I don't know. He said, look, I'm against this resolution, not because that it's a constitutional resolution or anything like that. I support the Constitution, blah, blah, blah. But because he doesn't like the idea of sanctuaries in general. And his thinking, well, again, this is like total leftist thinking, that there is a supreme government above our government that can disband with our wishes at any moment it chooses. And when it chooses, we all have no choice but just twiddle our thumbs and hunch our shoulders and scurry on and do what we're told. That's not even remotely how America was conceived and intended to be constructed in the founding era. A free society, whether you like it or not, is going to be a patchwork of societies. The city of Stevens Point is its own government, its own society. And the city can decide for itself what it wants to do, what laws it wants to obey, which ones it doesn't want to obey. And there's not a damn thing any other government, the county or the state or the federal governments, can do about it. And that is what it looks like living in a free society. You are not going to have this monolithic government in place that just orders everybody to do certain things and then everybody just has to comply. That's not how it works in a free society. We all get to determine our own lives on some level. You know, obviously, as a libertarian, I think individuals should have the maximum authority over their own lives and their own property. Now, granted, that's not the way it works in America. I mean, I don't think it ever worked that way in America. But at least it was always thought that governments, local governments, could basically just flip the finger to other governments and say, no, we're not doing that. And there cannot be any consequences for that. Perfect case in point. Following the Civil War, why is it that basically the Confederate soldiers were sent home? They were sent home with their guns, mind you. There was no gun confiscation that was taking place. They were just sent back home. Why is it nobody was hung for treason? Why is it that there wasn't gun confiscation? Why wasn't there confiscation of like all their property and everything else? Why didn't? Because they had a right to rebel. That was basically caked into the very premise of the constitutional thinking of the time, that no state was bound to the federal authority. Like they had the right to decide whether or not they wanted to enforce a law. Wisconsin is famous for this. Wisconsin was famous for not enforcing the Fugitive Slave Act back in, what was it, the 1840s or something. The federal government passed this Fugitive Slave Act that basically said that, you know, if a federal marshal comes in and they arrest a runaway slave, that, you know, they could return it back to whatever plantation the slave came from. Well, Wisconsin very notably passed a law that says, no, we're not enforcing any such thing here. So it's happened throughout history, the idea that we can say no, okay? And so it drives me crazy when people who sit on the county board and look, even at the city level, every time, you know, somebody on the council or the mayor says, well, we have to do this because the state told us to, I want to pull my hair out and be like, no, if it's dumb, just don't do it. Who cares? Like nothing can happen to you. Like nothing's going to happen. I promise. You know, the state of Wisconsin's not going to roll in the National Guard tomorrow and put everything under martial law because you didn't enforce zoning code chapter 23, section 2, subsection B. Okay. That's not going to happen. So, yeah, I mean, again, it was really cool and really refreshing to see that many people show up for this. It was, all the people opposed to it said all the predictable, programmable things. These people are NPCs. Very few of them have an original thought that crosses their head at any given time. That's just the way it is. But it is funny that to hold public office, right? You have to take this oath. And Soik said this too. He said, as a Marine, I had to take the oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And you all had to take that oath too. And it's funny, to get a seat of power, a lot of these people are perfectly happy just parroting some oath that, let's face it, it doesn't mean anything to them. All right. They're just mouthing these words. They're just repeating these words. It's like they're getting married to their position, you know. They're just repeating whatever they're told to say. And then when somebody comes along and says, "Oh, we want you to affirm what you said," and then all of a sudden it's like, "Ho, hold on now. I may have took a constitutional oath, but you know, let's not get crazy here on the Constitution stuff." Like that's how it comes off with all of these politicians. They're so slimy. They're so, you know, self-interested and like only interested in preserving the power of their seat. It's just so ridiculous. And it's so funny to watch them squirm, to be quite honest. So Scott Soik, awesome job bringing this up. I look forward to the county board meeting. Now I want to be there in person. I want front row seats. Somebody needs to be out there selling tickets for this meeting because I want to watch these people squirm, and I want to watch people, you know, back away from it as far as they can. Be like, well, I may have taken an oath, but let's not get carried away here. You know, didn't mean anything. So, yeah, that's really all I wanted to talk about. Just mainly that, because again, I love it that you guys are out there just being such a pain in the ass to local government. And I want to see it more and more and more going forward. And I think we are going to see more and more of it going forward. I think people are finally just annoyed and pissed off. And yeah, there's stuff coming down the pike for the school board too, that I just found out about. So yeah, kudos to all the people that have been going to the school board stuff too. Not really my thing, just because I'm perfectly happy watching the whole system crash and burn. Like I'm not, but you know, if you have kids in the school system, you definitely want to be involved with what they're doing, because they're all the same kind of slimy, spineless, like jello creatures. You know, you can't ever pin them down on anything. They're always looking for a way out, or they're looking for a way to not have to deal with criticism and stuff like that. They're not there to like really benefit anybody but themselves. In the overwhelming majority of cases, that's true. There are exceptions. And if you follow this stream, you know who, you know, I think there are exceptions on the city council. I've named them numerous times. But yeah, I guess that's it. I mean, follow more of this. We got more of it coming. More of it's going to start popping up, and it's going to give us more to talk about in these streams, because that's what's really exciting about this. It's not these these boring meetings, these committee meetings, these city council meetings. It's really about like what we're doing to, you know, counteract that. And I mean, that's what I try to do with this stream. And I'm so happy that in the last year, this has just become a huge issue, and people are just finally fed up to the point where they're coming out in mass. I mean, 7:30 in the morning. Are you kidding me? People had to get up and get ready. People had to be up by like at least 6, a lot of them, to get up and get ready. And yeah, so kudos to them. All right, I'm going to shut this thing down, and, you know, cheers, everybody. Have a great weekend. And I very happily look forward to more such meetings. So take care, everybody. Have a great weekend.